The fifth one, honor your father and your mother, is one that has always been very important to me, and I think is very important to you. I think a lot of people may think that honoring is just like just having respect for your parents. I think it goes beyond that. This one is very powerful in my opinion. Like I've seen a lot of trauma, a lot of issues with young adults and with even adults, like come from parents and how like they were treated by their parents. But here God is saying something really powerful, because I've been learning a lot that like not sometimes there's people that hate their parents, you know, and this is a very tough conversation. But there's people that dislike their parents, and I can see that there's some parents that have mistreated their kids. I understand that, and we all have gone through the different kinds of trauma for sure. But this one, I read it in a book, and now I also like heard a pastor preach about this, and this pastor was talking about how he hated his dad because his dad did unspeakable things to him, and eventually like he was becoming a pastor and all, and God talked to him and said like, you need to forgive your dad for what he did to you, and he didn't want to, and his life was getting like worse and worse. Eventually it got to a point where he was just like, okay God, I'll listen to you and I'll forgive my dad. And that's when God spoke to him and said, no, that's not enough anymore. Now you gotta forgive your dad, and you gotta love your dad. You gotta tell him you love him. And now the pastor was like, oh no, like this is way more than what you said originally, which is funny. But the pastor was like, well, if I don't listen, like things are gonna get worse and worse. And he did that. He forgave his dad. He went to talk to him, to a dad that he didn't really speak to, and he told him he loved him. And that was probably like maybe the first time that the dad has heard that coming from his kid since he's been an adult. And that's where his life changed. He started to become more happy, more successful, and not only that also changed his dad's life. Because that act of kindness that the son was able to,
after all that the dad did to him,
that changed his life too. And last thing, and I know I'm speaking a lot, but last thing, one of the things that he said was that like we are made out of like our parents, right? Their DNA is so much. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that we are our parents. So when you hate your parents, you're hating yourself. That's deep, you know.
That was, and another thing like with like honoring parents is like, you're literally, God made everything about us for a reason. When we're adolescents, and like I know it's even hard to hear it from a teenager say it, but I would confidently admit that our brains are not fully developed, and we're obviously still developing and having new experiences. Whereas your parents are more hardened and they've been hit by life before. And for example, like in the Bible, they literally talk about the prodigal son. He thought, all this money, hooray, now I'm free from my parents. He didn't honor his parents by just leaving them. And eventually his life ended up broken and nothing, because he didn't have somebody to teach him every single part of the way. So his brain never fully developed, I guess. And eventually he had to go back and say sorry. And then their family was repaired because he was able to go back with honor to the parents and say, I'll work as this, and this. I'm so sorry for betraying you. And to me, it's just really powerful, because it's like, you need to listen to your parents in the first place, but if you don't, come back to them and kind of honor them, and not kind of, you need to honor them. And I think, I don't know, that's kind of my take on it.
No, yeah, and that's perfect, because there's different types of people that are going to be listening to this, and it's very important that they hear all these things.